Enes, good morning. Nice to see you again.
Nice to see you again, Steve.
It's great to meet you, and I'm wondering if you wouldn't mind telling the audience something about yourself, please, sir.
Absolutely. I'm a data scientist. I'm an engineer by training. I built my career on developing AI products and companies. It's my third startup company now. My first company was an extension of my Ph.D. In the US in Pittsburgh, PA at Carnegie Mellon. Spun it out around it, got acquired. I've been a serial entrepreneur since then. And I've been building these AI solutions in highly sensitive environments and deeply regulated industries, including electricity and in the last 7 years now, healthcare.
Okay, so tell me about the current program you're involved in, please.
Absolutely. So as I said, I spent the last 15 years on the AI R&D data science modeling side. How do you build models to infer, predict X, Y, and Z? But saw that, especially during my last position. My previous company was in the surgical tech domain, whereby we were building different AI models, leveraging different kind of data modalities like laparoscopic or robotic surgical videos or electronic health records. And as I assumed the role of the chief data science officer, I saw that in healthcare we need better tools, better processes, because AI feeds from robust and scalable data assets. And as you know, in healthcare in particular, there's a lot of red tapes because of sensitivity of surrounding privacy or security or other compliance considerations. And the current best-in-class machine learning tooling solutions are not built for those red tapes. So you cannot move data, you cannot move models, you cannot bring models to users or data to users, or the other way around. As such, we thought, okay, number one, people believe AI is the new electricity, quote unquote, but just like electricity, and that's my personal bias, given I spent well over a decade in the electricity domain, if AI in healthcare is to be as ubiquitous as electricity, then it has to become as reliable as a utility. In other words, it has to be measurable. It has to be predictable. It has to be effective, safe, equitable. And today, AI models in healthcare are brittle because they are not built on top of a utility-grade infrastructure. So I compare, what we are building today, the guardrails and rails for medical AI, to the 1800s, where the first electrification efforts were underway in the US and Europe. That being said, given we're in the early days, we really zeroed in on the last mile problem for medical AI. And that has meant AI developers in healthcare and life sciences do need to generate evidence on the efficacy of their models. And they need to show how those models perform in real world scenarios, just like you need to get a regulatory clearance for your pharmaceutical drug or medical device. These AI solutions are subject to similar regulations, and so we position our platform to offer a validation as a service to produce the accuracy metrics for AI developers who seek regulatory clearance for their medical AI solution.
How do you go about doing that?
So we have adopted machine learning operations, ML ops principles. Think of the different tooling out there surrounding data operations and ML operations. But we had to redesign the technology stack given the regulatory constraints and data constraints for healthcare, meaning we built a technology platform that can be deployed anywhere without depending on the cloud availability. Because today, most commercial grade AI operations depend strictly on managed services that come with the cloud. We remove all of that. And today we follow regulatory guidelines, in particular those from the FDA, because a lot of our customers do seek US market entry and FDA clearance. And I like to put a pin in this because we do have a lot of European customers who have historically prioritized Europe CE mark first over FDA, but it has been the other way around the last few years now because of the MDR challenges. That being said, we follow FDA guidelines. The FDA says, and by the way, FDA has cleared to date nearly 1,000 medical AI solutions. And the annual approval figure has been doubling every 2 years, and every new AI version does necessitate a new validation, a new submission. That being said, it is a very simple principle. Show me how your AI predictions perform against those from a panel of experts. Let's say, an AI model might think, it might automatically segment a tumor of interest in a lung CT scan. And the FDA says, and of course there's more, nuances to this, but ultimately they say, okay, they ask the AI developer to compare, let's say, from a few hundred CT scans, how those AI segmentation, inferences from that model might compare against those performed by, let's say, 3 US board certified radiologists. And you compare how those polygons, if you will, that depict the tumor, compare and contrast, and do this in a reproducible, auditable, and scientific way, and to produce the accuracy metrics, let's say AUC, ROC, sensitivity, specificity, kinds of accuracy metrics that ultimately illustrate how reliable an AI model is for different kinds of metrics of interest.
So you would use confusion metrics, you would use F1 scores. What other scores do you use?
So depending on what kind of predictions AI might perform, there's a host of AI metrics, actually accuracy metrics that many practitioners have already been using for decades in the non-AI domains, like drugs and devices, to be exact. So AUC, ROC, F1 score, confusion matrix, depending on whether you are using, because those are typically relevant to classification type of models. In other words, can you grade a severity of a tumor, or can you detect the presence or absence of a malignant tumor? Those are classification types of models in the data science lingo. Now, you can also predict and segment bodies of interest in an anatomy. As I alluded to earlier, you can segment, create polygons around a tumor of interest. And there, for example, another accuracy metric called intersection over union, how that might capture where the tumor lies from a ground truth perspective, and basically you're effectively counting the pixels that fall into the ground truth polygon and compare it to how the polygon from the AI model might compare.
Okay, so when someone comes to you and they look at things like the Matthews correlation coefficient,
yes,
or they look at things like the logarithmic loss,
absolutely,
they know which particular model is going to apply to them.
Yes. So our customers typically go through the pre-submission process with the regulatory body because we are not a notified body. We are also not a regulatory consultancy. We are just a different breed of an organization that brings technology, clinical science, and regulatory science together to run these studies. And typically our customers come to us with a protocol. They run the literature review, they identify their predicates, and then cement a regulatory strategy and run that by the regulatory bodies such as the FDA. And then with that protocol at hand, they come to us, hey, the FDA told us to run our model against such and such cases and ground truth by such and such board certified physician experts to produce such and such accuracy metrics. And they come to us because we are orders of magnitude faster and scalable, and we minimize some of the complexities that would otherwise compromise the integrity of the study, because AI validation studies, that's a different beast compared to how the pharmaceutical device industry have been undergoing.
And do you think that the FDA is using an AI model to come up with these answers?
Oh boy, the FDA has definitely been intrigued and curious about the avenues in which they can themselves use AI. And we've been advising the FDA on some of these topics ourselves. But one of the interesting areas that they're trying to collaborate with the industry on is the utilization of generative AI for documentation purposes, because documentation is tedious, and there's only so many personnel members at the FDA or on the company side. So how do you apply the rigor at scale without undergoing through some inefficiencies and not breaking the bank from a company perspective? The FDA Commissioner Robert Califf did raise the issue earlier this year that they need to scale their operations because they cannot keep up with the submissions on the AI side. with the new versions and new domains being unlocked, because medical AI from an FDA perspective has by and large been in the diagnostics and the imaging domain. When you look at numbers, it's roughly around 80% of all cleared devices are in the radiology domain. That being said, other fields are coming online. Multimodal AI is coming online. And also pharma companies are getting in on AI. And you bet that the FDA has a position on how the AI is to be used for the clinical and discovery cycle of a drug. In fact, to this date, the FDA has received over 300 submissions for a drug that mention the use of AI in the preclinical or clinical cycle of that drug. Now, to date, those pharma-specific clinical, preclinical AI utilization efforts have been flying under the radar for the most part. In other words, they are not subject to the same rigor or validation that the AI-enabled software and medical device developers, because those folks are subject to either 510K or de novo types of clearances. Whereas, if you're using it in the back office, AI is not subject to this, FDA purview. That being said, you bet that the FDA has an opinion on it, and they have issued discussion papers, which typically means that today's discussion paper is tomorrow's, rules and regulations, right? And the FDA definitely wants some sort of GXP compliance apply to the world of AI development and use in drug discovery and development. AI has been going through major waves of innovation. That being said, in AI and healthcare and life sciences, we are observing a tsunami of challenges that go hand in hand with AI development. Because I'm a data scientist, right? So I spend my entire career building models. That being said, when you look at the flurry of rules and regulations coming from every which direction, it's a dizzying pace. And to this date, a lot of our customers that also include largely European companies, and I'm going to give US-specific examples just for the sake of the conversation, but it feels like there's a new set of rules and regulations being announced every month from the states, individual states, from the Department of Health and Human Services. You saw the executive order from the White House. There are different agencies that are under HHS. So all these 3-4 letter agencies have a position on how AI is to be developed, used, and maintained. Now, model development turned out to be the easy part of the AI journey in healthcare and life sciences. And now they are supposed to be commercialized and scaled within guardrails. And that's the biggest challenge for AI developers in healthcare and life science. And that's where we step in, because we have specifically specialized in the tooling side of the equation. We don't build models, we build the picks and shovels, if you will. How do you build clinical grade, regulatory grade models faster at scale? And so therefore, we bring data partners from health systems and a task force of physician experts who are by law required to ground truth the data, to offer a benchmark that will be compared against the AI inferences. And many AI developers lack that kind of a infrastructure. And the bar has been steadily raised by different agencies to show more evidence, more frequent evidence, larger evidence, more diverse evidence. And nobody's really prepared. Even the big guys, like the multinationals, even they are not prepared. And how do you keep their solutions on the market, staying compliant? Because with the new rules and regulations, many groups, large and small, face going obsolete overnight if you're not keeping up with these latest rules. And that's why we're stepping in to ensure that all that AI lifecycle is managed within those guardrails to produce evidence faster at scale and to keep your AI solutions within the market successfully.
I've always seen a place for an organization like yours in a competitive space. So what I mean by that is that there are many, and in fact, there's an increasing amount of AI solutions in imaging, in management, in accounting, in healthcare. But I'm always amazed that people are not comparing the various AI solutions using misclassification rates, jackknifing, resampling, bootstrapping, and the other mathematical techniques. Now, that would strike me as a wonderful opportunity to sort of say, okay, well, you're all sitting in the same room and you're all making the same claims. But over time, we've actually found that the particular system has a higher or a lower misclassification rate. It has, if we use jackknifing, we can use any mathematical technique you like. But if we use jackknifing, for example, because it's nice and simple, or relatively simple, then we can say, okay, well, your particular solution is giving us a better result. Is that something you're going to get involved in?
Yes, I mean, we see growing demand, especially the fact that you can get your first approval, but when you look at some of the latest, rules, regulations, like predetermined change control plan, how do you offer post-market evidence on how your AI is performing in the real world? And how do you monitor it? And how do you ensure that there's no data drift or model drift? How do you apply your model to the right population? And so thus far, people do not talk about these issues.
No, they don't. And I think it's a big problem. Okay.
So therefore, you have to establish these systems, and maybe to give you one clear example from the regulatory world, OCR, Office of Civil Rights under U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, they issued a new rule that will be effective in spring 2025 that said that health systems who use AI have to establish compliance programs to monitor AI to ensure that they're operating effectively and safely and do not discriminate against certain patient subgroups.
Okay, I agree. And they're talking about cost sensitivity learning models, or metrics, sorry, cost sensitivity learning metrics. That's what they're talking about. And they're going to involve decision curve analytics, analytics, and the usual things, calibration curves, area under the curve. And I think that that's a very smart move, but they're the only people who I've seen anywhere who brought that up.
Yeah, I think another piece, so I like to think of it that way, because thus far, the key stakeholder in AI development has been in the industry, meaning, you invest your dollars and euros and shekels, you build your AI model, and then you bring it to market successfully. But now with the latest rules and regulations, again, given the US examples, AI users, i.e. healthcare providers and payers, will be accountable and liable for their use of AI. Number one. Number two, homegrown AI developed within hospitals were not part of the FDA purview. That has changed. So now even homegrown AI will be subject to such monitoring activities. In other words, in the past, it was the industry that was, assuming the biggest burden. But now with the new rules and regulations, it will be the AI users and AI developers from different segments of the ecosystem will be subject to these, rules and regulations.
Okay, so in summary, I'm an AI developer. I'm a modeler over here, and I think I've got something that's competitive. I approach an organization like you. What can you do for me in the United States?
Sure. So we can, basically operate as a one-stop shop that we call an AI CRO. You share your protocol, you link up your AI model with the platform, which is SOC 2 certified. We take data integrity as seriously as IP integrity. So because we have multiple stakeholders. So we source data from data partners, healthcare providers of different kinds in the US. And to date, currently, the FDA definitely wants several different types of, healthcare providers to supply data, rural, urban, community versus academic medical centers, etc. So we get data, we get physician experts, we get the model integrated, we apply the accuracy metric generation formula that has been green-lighted by the pre-submission process. So all the customer has to do is give us the protocol, link up the model, and sit back as we run this validation study in weeks instead of months or years. So we really improve your time to market. We are 5x faster, 2x more economical, and then we minimize the complexities that can otherwise jeopardize the integrity of your study, which can cost you millions and years otherwise.
Okay, that's a perfect summation of what you do. I think what you've done, and the reason I wanted you on the podcast, is that you're ahead of the curve and you're doing a great job in the States. I think that you are going to lead to a way of finding the imbalance in many metrics and if you like, the drift that's happening in AI. I think there's an enormous drift in AI. There's potentially errors. I get in trouble. And I think that you've encapsulated the confusion around legislation and the fear. I think it's a lot of it's based on. But thank you very much for your time. I'm very grateful. And you've been very kind with your time. And I wish you all the very best in the future.
Thank you, Stephen. It's been my pleasure.